We are not sharks, and finance is not water. We don't fear change. We make it. Starting a whole new war. Only this one is over data. I want you on my team, not theirs.
The app's meant to save your life in an epidemic, but the Chinese would use it to monitor everything about you.
Dominic will fight.
He's a dangerous man. Run, Massimo. Run and never come back.
How do you see your character in terms of geopolitics in the last 5 years of turmoil between relationships between Western and China? Because a couple of years ago, China was a major partner, especially from the United States. And during the last couple of years, has been a shift in terms of more nationalism, close companies.
Yes.
So how do you see that in terms of your character?
That's a great question. I think that's exactly what the show is trying to look at, which is the movement away from a China-America policy, which was a financial policy based on mutual, by banding together for mutual financial benefit, to a world now where China was wanting to separate more and using its growing financial might and power to maximize its own benefits, which is understandable if you're in China and you're wanting to grow your economy in the way that you want to, but it's very scary or threatening for the people outside of that country. How do we view that? And I think that that's what the show is looking at. Who are these people in China today that we were partners with before, and now how do we see them? Are they still our partners, or are we adversaries? And the show tries to take a very nuanced look at that. So if it's not just a question of, are you a good guy? Are you a bad guy? Or are you somewhere in between? And I think, if we're successful, you start to see that we're all somewhere in between. We're all good guys, bad guys, and somewhere a little in between.
Yeah, it's interesting because, the Western, and I'm talking only about America, Europe as well, has China get away with a lot of things because of the commercial, partnership they had during these years. And during the last couple of years has been more like, okay, look, there's been like, Hong Kong situation, the Tibet situation, I don't know, that group from the northern China, with Disney and Mulan. So he has been more pressure in terms of human rights, especially in China, whereas a couple of years before it was, okay, that's something internal.
Right. A lot of that is economic based, right? It's like if you're financial partners and you're making a lot of money together, then you overlook a lot of things. And then when you're not making a lot of money together, suddenly, these things that you were turning a blind eye to, you're no longer turning a blind eye to. I mean, I think that the show is looking at the evolution of this relationship between essentially, two partners, meaning like the United States and Europe, if you could consider them one partner, and China, how they were working together to all make as much money as possible. And then when their interests begin to separate, the sort of fluidity of ethics, where suddenly you found them perfectly ethical before, and now all of a sudden they're not as ethical as they were because your interests have changed. And I think that the show looks at that both ways, that both sides, no side is 100% clean in this. Like when you're in the business of making money, a lot of people are getting hurt and a lot of unethical decisions are being made. And I think that, we like to stand and point fingers at the other guy by saying, look at this person is doing this, and this just to make money. And this, the show tries to show, the show is called Devils, like the people that participate in this are devils. What do we sacrifice for this power? What do we, what are we willing to overlook in the name of making the extra money?
Mm-hmm. When I was looking at the show and I'm looking at your character, it reminded me of Jack Ma, that he grew up like a multi-billionaire, and last year, a couple of years before, China said, "Okay, that's it, stop." they basically withdrew all the money from him. So it's like, is that your character like that?
Well, I think Jack Ma is an influence, was an influence to the creation of my character. He's one example. There's a man named, do you know who Kai Fu Lee is? Kai Fu Lee is another sort of person that's been an inspiration to my character. The thing about Jack Ma was that China didn't get involved in his, they didn't mind him making all of this money, provided he was not critical of the Chinese government. It's when he started to say things that were critical of the government that they sort of, is when he sort of disappeared for a time. I think that, it's an interesting story. It's sort of like, who are you in service of? Are you in service of yourself, which is an American point of view? The American capitalist, through my own hard work and talent, I enrich myself and become a billionaire. In China, I think the idea is you work hard on behalf of others, the country, and yourself, and you enrich us all. So when you begin to start saying things like, I'm critical of my own government, then you're sort of going against that philosophy, and then there's a problem.
Okay, and the last question is, in the pilot, in the first episode, mentioned, Patrick Dempsey's invention of China America, and said it's your invention. So it gives you a chill that a lot of movement in terms of economic and the destiny of billions of people are just on the shoulders of a couple of men. And it feels you like conspiracy theorist, like, wow.
Yeah. Well, I think that is one of the main themes of the show, both in seasons 1 and season 2, which is this realization that it's not nations that determine this. It's banks. It's banks who have been able to consolidate so much money and so much power that what the people who head the banks, people like Patrick Dempsey's character in Devils or Alessandro Borghi's character in Devils, their individual decisions that make their policy for their banks can affect nations and can affect all the people in those nations. And it's very sobering. But I think there's something very true to that. It's something we all need to look at, I think, as citizens, like why that's the case. It's not presidents, it's not kings, it's heads of banks.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, and you were very kind, and I love the show.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Creepy.
Well, thank you for your
creepy.
Time. Yeah. It's creepy. It's hopefully it's like thought provoking, right? That
yes.
Hopefully people can be entertained and also be made to think about certain things. Why do we allow that to happen, or how? What are the ethics of people that have all the money and all the power in the world?